Cue the ice cube. Today was a good day, ladies and gentlemen, fellas, as we close up week 7 on Sunday. It was a good day. We didn't have to kill nobody. It was a good day. I mean, maybe in the DFS streets, we all came to war. All the patrons, myself, where I ammunition, our backpacks, we went into the streets and we dominated the streets. Everybody winning, whether it's first place prizes, whether it's taking down the SuperDraft main contest for $40,000 a Patreon, whether it's second and third place, all the player props. Week 7 was as clear as it can be, and a lot of the times it feels like that and you lose. Shit happens. Players get hurt, blowouts in games you didn't expect, all this type of stuff. But no. The 2021 season continues of it being very simple. You stack the Rams, you stack the Tampa Bay Buccaneers like my tweet said, and you just profit. You sit back, you eat some nachos, and you watch Tom Brady chase every single record and throw touchdown passes to all your stacks. And you watch the Rams go out there and continue to pass the ball over expectation at record high rates, with one guy seeing a 35% target share in Cooper Kupp and smashing every slate, and then you sprinkle in the Higbees, the Van Jeffersons, the Robert Woods, and you run it back with the most obvious option on the other side, DeAndre Swift, who checks down and gets there on the first drive of the game. Everything happened yesterday. If you listen to the Patreon exclusive Sunday morning show where I talk about my exposures, my stacks, exactly how I'm playing the slate, it looks as if I'm talking about it on Monday. We had the see-through vision, if you will, and it was a very nice week. Now let's close it on a Monday where I feel even not better, because it's hard to feel better than what we did yesterday. Myself bringing in about 17 G's. The Patreons, everybody winning, everybody paying for their memberships. Come and join the community. We just hit over 1,000 Patreons yesterday. Big accomplishment, as that community is just fucking growing right now. So you can check that out down below. But let's talk about the Monday Night Football slate for all of you that are chasing your winnings. And if you're chasing your losses, stop that stuff right now. You found the right place right here to get tooled up, to get educated, right? To get your mind sharpened. All you got to do, though, secure that subscribe button right there. So there it is. Do that. I appreciate it. Let's slide now into the player-by-player breakdown. And let your shoulders lean a little bit. It's Monday. It might be a bad day for everybody out there saying, I got to go back to work. But if you're feeling that way, if you're saying, I don't want to go to work today, you have to change up. Start to change up. You can't just do it overnight, but slowly start to change up what you're doing. Whether it's building some money up on the side, here's some life advice for you. Building some money up on the side to a spot where you can start to do some other stuff, or take some more interesting jobs that you want to, or work on that project you want to do. You got to change the way you feel on Mondays. You can't be dreading the Sunday scaries plus the Monday nightmares, right? So let's get that twisted and changed up right now with a beautiful start to the day for all you beautiful people out there. We're going to start it up top right now. Salary order here. We're going to let you know if I like these players or not. I have the projections, ownership, optimal plays, rankings, all that stuff already done for this slate. The optimizer's already loaded. Everybody in the Patreon community streets already ready to go to war. And you're going to start it up top with a very interesting slate, by the way. In this game, I actually took the Saints, I believe -4, might have been -4.5. I believe it's -4 from the betting video earlier in the week. So you get Kamara here to start it off. Yes, he's obviously the top play in the slate. Nobody has to tell you otherwise. You're not going to try and get sneaky here and not play Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is a clear yes. I have him coming in already for 94% projected ownership. So actually, even though you might think you're being sneaky by fading Kamara and saying, oh, if I fade him only 5% of the field, the only way this pays off for you is very similar to how it did earlier in the year with Christian McCaffrey, when McCaffrey got hurt and he was 90% owned. That's the only way this works for you. Otherwise, even if Kamara only scores 15 points, which would be 10 less than I have him projected for, I have Kamara for over 7 more points than anybody else on the slate, and he's 12,800 is expensive, but still a fair price. Factoring in that if you look at this slate, outside of 2 players, I have Kamara for 2 times the amount of fantasy points as basically everybody else on the slate. So yes, Kamara looks fantastic. It's obvious. You want to add some more things in. He's a favorite with a decent implied team total. He's had 24 more opportunities in 4 to the 5 games this year, and he's coming off of their last game where he saw a season high 8 targets. Again, the only way this works for you is if the McCaffrey stuff from earlier in the year happens and Kamara ends up getting hurt in this game against the Seahawks run defense that is very meh. So I don't want to be wishing injury upon anybody. I'm not going to be playing it that way. I actually think it hurts you more if you don't play Kamara, because if that's your best chance, if your best chance of winning a slate tonight, or at least your best chance of what you think is by Kamara getting hurt, you're not playing the slate right. Because in that slate where McCaffrey, right, was 94, 95, and higher stakes, he was 98% owned. It doesn't hurt you to play him. You're just putting him in there. Everybody's playing him. It's just a shitty thing you have to do. There's no edge in playing him or not. The only way it matters is if you're playing him in the captain spot, which obviously he's a very strong captain on tonight's slate. But even if you don't, if Kamara gets hurt tonight, there's still a really good chance that you can cash and also win the slate, because so many people are going to own him that it's almost going to be like a free square. So there's my stance on the Kamara tonight. Do what you want to do other than that. Next up is Jameis Winston tonight. Look, this is a somewhat steep price point, $11,800. I shouldn't even say somewhat. This is a steep price point for a player so far this year who is not scoring that many fantasy points. He has not yet attempted over 30 passes in a game, right? Last time out, he attempted exactly 30. He has 2 games this year of over 25 fantasy points. One of them was week 1 where he threw 5 passing touchdowns because of all the short turnovers and all the short fields. And then the one deep one to Deontay Harris, who is not going to play today. Also, Chris Hogan retired. Chasing, I don't know if anybody saw that. Taysom Hill's not going to be playing today, so some injuries for sure. Rashad Penny is returning for the Seahawks, which will now make it potentially 4 running backs active tonight for them, and hurt Alex Collins and hurt DJ Dallas to an extent. But Jameis, he has 2 games over 25 fantasy points, and then he has 3 games below 14. So you don't know what you're getting tonight out of Jameis Winston. Now, if you're talking about just the game situations and the scenarios that we're looking at, he is a favorite in this game. He does have a decent implied team total. He does have a nice matchup against Seattle and their secondary and their lack of a pass rush. So this is the spot for Jameis to actually exceed his projections of 14, 15 that he usually gets on most weeks, around 14, 15, 16. I have Jameis for 17.5 fantasy points. I do think he'll be one of the highest owned guys, probably top 2 or top 3 owned guy in the slate. I do think that he looks like a good play in the slate. So Jameis for me becomes a yes here. You probably need, maybe not the 3 touchdown game. You need at least a 2 touchdown game for Jameis to be popping off, but you might need the 3 touchdown game at this price tag of $11,800, depending on what the rest of the players in the slate do, including this next man up in DK Metcalf. He did not practice on Friday with a foot. He's expected to play in this game, but just track that injury news. He seems to have been Geno's go-to guy in basically 5 quarters of Geno Smith. Back in week 5 when Russell Wilson got hurt, he had 2 receptions and the touchdown which should have definitely either been intercepted or batted down, but it did result in a touchdown. And then in week 6, he saw 7 targets, the same amount as Tyler Lockett, but he actually converted 6 catches, 58 yards on those. So you're probably going to need a touchdown at $10,800 from DK Metcalf. It's not the only way you get there. Surely he can have the 7-catch, 120-yard game with the bonus on DraftKings and have a 30 or 20-plus point fantasy day without the touchdown. Just seems hard for Geno to really lock into a guy like that. But another week, an easier matchup now against the Saints defense. Nowhere near a very easy matchup, but easier than a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that has a much better front than what you're going to see in this Saints defense. Saints defensive front is banged up and also aging and getting older. All that being said, he's very close to a maybe for me, but he's still going to be a yes, Mr. DK Metcalf. That's just the way that this slate is going to break down. You kind of just need these guys to be yeses. Now, next up, we start to get into some of these interesting plays after we talk about Geno Smith. Geno Smith is a very fair price point here. Geno Smith now through 2 games, he came in for a quarter and a half and scored 10 fantasy points. And then a full game against the Steelers, he only scored 10 fantasy points. You saw no rushing yards week 6, which was somewhat of a concern, but now he gets a matchup against an easier defensive line. Maybe you start to see that a little bit more if his team is giving him some more opportunities to get through his reads. He doesn't see anything. He takes off for 5-6 yard scrambles. I'm expecting 30-plus attempts here out of Geno Smith. I don't have him projecting out as fantastic, but I do have him projecting out as the 3rd highest projected player on the slate. I have him for more fantasy points than DK Metcalf. I obviously have DK Metcalf. Maybe it's not that obvious, but I have DK Metcalf's ceiling as being higher than Geno Smith's. But I do think that Geno Smith right now is one of the top plays on the slate. I would prefer, as it stands right now, when you factor in the price point, Geno Smith over Jameis Winston. That's if you factor in the price point. Like if you're trying to see who gets into an optimal more often, I would say that Geno Smith is going to hit the optimal lineups more often than Jameis, and I do think he'll be lower owned than Jameis, so it makes Geno Smith a very good play in the slate. I currently have Jameis Winston right now in the Patreon ownership projections for 54% ownership, and Geno Smith 44%, even though their fantasy points are only separated by a point to a point and a half, and I think that they have a similar ceiling. All those projections, ranks, all that type of stuff, you can find it on Patreon. Now, before we continue to go through the rest of these players and we start to actually get to some of the juicy plays, the interesting plays, the how does this player being back affected, even Traequon Smith is back. There's so many new players going to be in and out of these rotations now that it makes this Showdown slate very interesting. We do have a lot of value, a lot of interesting value. But before we do that, I'm going to talk about the prop that I have tonight. And it's both the quarterbacks. Like yesterday, we took the unders on the Carson Wentz overall passing yards. We took the over on Deebo Samuel. The Sunday Night Showdown props hit. It was a great day. I mean, Sunday was a fantastic. Everything was fucking hitting. It was fantastic. Now we try and keep that train going. This one's a $150 bet that I have here. If you're not yet already on Prize Picks, I don't know what you're doing. I have the over 204 passing yards for Geno Smith. I have him closer to 230 passing yards tonight. I have Jameis over 201.5 passing yards. So I don't normally like just hammering overs, but these lines are way too low. I have Jameis in the upper 220s. So I have these guys about 20 to 25 and close to 30 yards over their passing numbers here. So I take the overs on both of those. I place it for $150. We try and win $300 later today. It's very simple. You will get a free bet up to $100. If you are a new user today, you get your first bet for free up to $100 if you use the code SAL. No catch. That's it. You put $50 in and you use the code SAL, they'll give you an extra $50 right there. No catch. Nothing to it. You want to do it all the way up to $100? Go ahead. Go ahead. FREE. Free. It's simple. PrizePicks.com, you type it in, you go in there, you take the overs and the quarterback's passing yards tonight as long as they haven't rose by a ton. You put the code SAL in, my name, SAL, and there's your free bet up to $100 Rooskies. What are you waiting for? It is that simple to get free dollar Rooskies. It's about 30 seconds of your time. Where are you ever going to get paid? What is that? $200 a minute times 60 minutes. Where are you ever going to get paid $12,000 an hour? Even though you're only getting about 30 seconds of that. But there you go. there is the free bet. Let's get back into now some of these players that we got to talk about because it's about to get really, really interesting. Next man up is Tyler Lockett. And Tyler Lockett, for me, I can't have as much confidence in. He's going to be an X for a couple of reasons here. The Tyler Lockett that we all know and love, how does he get there more often than not? Well, he gets there more often than not from some volume, but mainly these deep ball moonshots the last 2.5 years down the field from Mr. Russell Wilson. Geno Smith is not going to be able to be hitting those deep shots as often, have as much touch on them, has as much anticipation in his throws, and that connection with Tyler Lockett. So it's hard to get as much interest in Tyler Lockett, whose price point stays pretty similar as if you saw, maybe be $600 more if you saw Russell Wilson out there. Now, he did see 7 targets last week, only brought in 2 catches for 35 yards on a pretty below average 48 air yards. So still expect like a 25% target share. If Geno drops back to throw 35 times in this game, expect Lockett to be somewhere around 7 to 9 targets, which keeps him in play for sure. But at $9,000, it's a fair price point. Don't get me wrong. He can still hit a deep shot. Geno can to him. They're going to take that shot eventually. But at $9,000, I do think he's a little bit overpriced here. You start to get down to Marquez Callaway, where there's not going to be a Deontay Harris. There's not going to be a Taysom Hill taking away usage in this game. Traequon Smith is returning, but who knows his connection with Jameis? He has had no time to actually practice with him. Traequon Smith returned to practice in a limited variety on Thursday. Then they actually did not have to report that. That's what a beat writer speculated. When you're on IR, they don't have to report how much you're practicing, which is interesting. So we don't know how much he practiced on Friday. Beat writer speculation is limited on Thursday, which would make sense in his first practice back. So now you get Marquez Callaway, who caught a Hail Mary, which is going to skew his stats the last time that they went out there. 4 catches, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns on 8 targets. He's $8,600. There's a really good chance that this is going to be a player who's in just optimal lineups this week. I would say that his chances of being in the optimal lineup are greater than like 33%, which is only a third, which to some people doesn't sound like a lot, but when there's so many players on this slate, 20 plus players to choose from that are in play, that's actually a pretty decent percentage. It's going to put you borderline top 5 to hit an optimal lineup because he's $8,600. If Jameis throws in this game, let's just say 30 times would be a season high. If he throws 32 times, you're probably going to see somewhere around 7 or 8 targets for Callaway, who is this bigger sized player on the outside who can play in the middle of the field. So I do think he picks up ownership. I think he's a decent SuperDraft play. We can talk about that later. For me right now, Marquez Callaway is going to come in as a yes. I would say that I don't have him projected for more points than Tyler Lockett. It's about a point difference. But if the ownership is going to hold where he comes in like 10% less, I would lean to go to him over Tyler Lockett in an optimal build. Next up is Alex Collins, who I'm not that interested in Alex Collins. We'll put him on here as a maybe. It's tough to really like Alex Collins. First of all, he didn't practice all week, so he's dealing with some sort of an injury. He's not like this insane talent. It takes him 20 carries to really get going for you. Although he didn't practice, he's expected to play in this one. But Rashad Penny is back. Their former first-round pick is now back. DJ Dallas just came off of the game where he was the most involved, mainly in the passing game, but the most involved. They still have Travis Holm there, which I would not doubt if he's inactive tonight instead of carrying 4 running backs. But you have a banged-up Alex Collins. You have a coming off IR Rashad Penny, so I expect him to just keep Travis Holm there as an emergency guy healthy, maybe sees 1 or 2 touches. But either way, you have potentially 4 active running backs tonight who are going to see touches, and you have a quarterback in Geno Smith who eventually is probably going to start running. How is that good for Alex Collins? And his price point is $7,400. This is the price point of a running back that you would expect to see 16 to 18 touches with red zone usage. I think he'll see red zone usage. I'm just hesitant to see if he sees 16 to 18 touches. I know in that game against the Steelers, although it took overtime, but he had 20 carries for 100 yards, got the 100-yard bonus in the first half. I'm not looking at a one-game sample here. I'm looking at the full career of Alex Collins, and now the full career when you factor in backfields that have 4 running backs active. This looked a little bit messy for Alex Collins this week, who I don't even have projected out for 10 fantasy points. So right now, Alex Collins is kind of a stay away for me as an underdog with a very low team implied total. I'm not liking it, facing a top 5 run defense coming off of a bye that run defense, by the way. I'm not really liking it that much. If there is one guy that I don't want to play above the $6,000 range, above the $5,000 range, it's going to be Alex Collins. The Saints defense would probably be second in that type of a breakdown of teams that or things that I don't want to play. I still think they're a solid play because they're facing Geno Smith off of a bye week, right? They have the number 3 run defense. The problem is their pass rush is not that great. It's been banged up all season long, though. If I had to put a no by any defense, it would be, or any team, any player above this price range, it would either be Alex Collins or the Saints defense. But I do think the Saints defense is interesting. I actually like the Saints defense more if you're playing them in the captain spot. And I don't normally like playing captain defenses. It doesn't work out often for you, but this slate, again, I prefer about probably 6 or 7 other captains, but this slate, I do think Saints defense, if you're going to play them, I'd go captain spot or nothing, just because if they're really going to pay off a $5,800 price tag, they're going to have to put up a 15-plus point day, more than likely, a 12-plus point day. And at that point, you're getting close to them at that price point being in the captain. So that's probably where I try to thread the needle. If you're going to play them at all, I put them in the captain spot. That being said, though, I would say in terms of my captain priorities, they would come in maybe maybe around 7th behind a lot of wide receivers and the quarterbacks and Kamara. Next up is DJ Dallas. DJ Dallas is a hard one to full on say that I have a ton of interest in terms of like a yes, just because, again, the thing I just said, there's 4 running backs. Now, maybe Rashad Penny is limited. Maybe Alex Collins is somewhat limited, and you see more DJ Dallas than we actually saw last week, which is a possibility. Last week, he ended up seeing a team high out of the running backs, 18 routes running that game, and ended up leading to a lot of passing game usage. He had caught all 5 of his targets for 33 yards, saw 4 carries, so he saw 9 attempts. So there's 9 opportunities last week. So 9 opportunities for DJ Dallas. I have him projecting out for like 6.5 fantasy points this week at $5,200. It's honestly, it's overpriced. He has a really good SuperDraft multiplier, 2.7x. He's in play for sure, because if you get 9 opportunities again on a showdown slate, it's hard not to like that, especially if a lot of them are in the receiving game. Touchdown upside, of course, when you're on the field and touching the ball that many times. But if Rashad Penny comes in, like let's just say Rashad Penny comes in and sees in this game 6 touches. I mean, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 of those get taken away from Travis Homer. The rest of them are going to get taken away from DJ Dallas, and 3 or 4 touches doesn't sound like a lot, but when it's 40% of your opportunity share, that is a lot. Next up is Traequon Smith, who I really want to like Traequon Smith this week. It's very difficult to put a full-on yes on Traequon Smith because we don't know how involved he's going to be. Like, I want to do this. I want to just put a yes on him, but we don't know how involved he's going to be, right? He has not yet practiced in full with Jameis Winston so far this season. He has no real chemistry with him. This passing offense in general is not that lovely for wide receivers. Like, Jameis can easily throw 25 times today, and you get 4 or 5 targets for Traequon Smith. And even though he's $4,800, that's not looking that great. But Traequon Smith, if there was a guy, Traequon Smith at $4,800, if there's anybody that I can choose from basically right now between $3,000 and $7,000 that I wanted to put in my lineup, it would probably be Traequon Smith. None of these guys stand out as great plays. A lot of them look decent. One of them being Traequon Smith, who in his career through 3 NFL seasons is averaging only 7.5 fantasy points per game. But there's some things skewed there. There's no Michael Thomas now in the offense when there was in a lot of those games, and some other things, right? We keep going down now to the tight end, Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett also in play. He only ran 19 routes though in that last game. I don't expect him to be that much of a factor because he wasn't that much of a factor when Russell Wilson was playing, and now you have Geno Smith. Geno Smith, who targeted him 2 times. He caught both of them for 40 yards. He played 30% in the slot and 20% out wide. I mean, this is basically the same Gerald Everett role. I don't expect Gerald Everett to see a lot of volume from Geno Smith. It's kind of the Gerald Everett catch 2 balls for 30 yards and a touchdown type of a game. Gerald Everett, fine play. Probably, honestly, at this point, prefer the kickers on this type of a slate when you factor in just how much usage that they're going to see and how many just projected points the kickers are going to have than a Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett, to me, at this price point, doesn't look like that good of a play. As I said, both of the kickers would be firmly in play. I mean, just whichever one you like more. They both project out for 6 or 7 fantasy points. If one leaves more money on the table for you, go for it. They don't really look that much different to me. Next up is Will Dissly. No interest in Will Dissly here. He's $3,400. He ran 18 routes last week. He did catch a touchdown, which some people are going to say, oh, there's the touchdown. Yeah, you got it last week. I don't know how many times he's going to do that. 2 catches for 8 yards on 2 targets. You're going to basically get Will Dissly to have 0 to 3 targets in this game. Do 0 to 3 targets on low target usage. He's not running downfield. He's playing close to the line of scrimmage. Are those 0 to 3 targets worth $3,400? I would argue they're not even worth $2,400, right? On this type of a slate, when we start to talk about the value below $2,000, there's no way in hell I can play Will Dissly. The Seattle Seahawks defense is a very good play this week. They're only $2,800. They project out for me for a good amount of fantasy points, about 5.5, which is solid for this price range when you're trying to look for some value. They rank borderline top 10 versus the run in some metrics, outside the top 15 in others. Number 3 in tackling. Pass rush is not that great, neither is the secondary, but a decent price tag. Next up is Rashad Penny, the rookie running back, or the former rookie running back in terms of being a first-round pick. That's what I meant by rookie. The former first-round pick for them, $2,600. Hard to really want to get to Rashad Penny here, right? Like, we don't know the actual role that he's going to see. I would say, coming off of so many injuries in his career, you might get Rashad Penny, and the fact that they have Alex Collins out there, and to be frank, they don't really care what happens to Alex Collins. He's not a part of their future like Rashad Penny can maybe be for the next 1 to 3 years. So they're going to run him even if he is banged up. So it's hard to like Rashad Penny when DJ Dallas is getting involvement. They still have Travis Homer, who they like back there. So I'm going to say Rashad Penny is a no. Like, I would expect him to probably come into this game and see anywhere from 4 to 6 touches, so it's hard to like that. Next up is Travis Homer. He's definitely a no for me. He's going to be running back 4 in the pecking order tonight. He ran just 3 routes last week, so you're not even getting usage. Had a 27-yard catch and run. He hasn't seen more than 3 touches in a game, and now there's 4 running backs active, so there's a chance that he doesn't even see any touches in this game, to be honest with you. So next up, we start to get some interesting plays here. We're at $2,200 and below, and some of the best plays on the entire slate are popping up. Juwan Johnson, the former wide receiver, went to Penn State, transferred to, I think, Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. He's a touchdown or bust player, but at $2,200, now that there's no Deontay Harris, there's no Taysom Hill, who's a red zone guy who can steal some stuff away from everybody on this team, Jameis to Alvin Kamara, he's out of there. He's a fly out of the mayonnaise or whatever you want to call it, right? He's a headache that we don't have to deal with. Don't even know what the fuck that analogy I just used was, but right now what you're getting is $4,200 22 routes run through 5 games, about 8 routes per game. That's not great, but it at least keeps him in play. Freddie Swain is the guy that we continue to say. He's going to be in play because so far this year he's been touchdown or bust. Freddie Swain is interesting. He's the clear wide receiver 3 on this team. He ran 29 routes last week, but now he has Geno Smith thrown to him. He could barely get there with Russell Wilson, and one broken play this year is making up like half of his fantasy points, but he saw 3 targets from Geno Smith, caught 2 balls for negative -4 yards. Brutal performance. He has not scored over 3 points in a game this year when he doesn't score a touchdown. So Freddie Swain has been the ultimate boomer bust guy this year. Now we get to a couple players, though, that I really like. Some of the better plays in the slate. Adam Trotman is one of them. Adam Trotman has not been good. He's only seen 4 targets since week 1. Week 1, he saw about 4 targets. Since then, he's only seen 4 targets in 4 games. Only 7.6 fantasy points total in the last 4 weeks. He's averaging less than 2 fantasy points a week these last 4 games. But now Deontay Harris and Taysom Hill are gone. I expect the routes to come up for Adam Trotman, and he's only $1,800. If we can get Adam Trotman in this game to run somewhere around 20 routes, it starts to look more appealing. So Adam Trotman, if I had to choose between Trotman, Freddie Swain, and Juwan Johnson, it would be Trotman. But if I had to choose between anybody that's $4,000 and below, there's no doubt in my mind that Kenny Stills is going to be the best play on the slate. He's probably the best play on the slate today, not named Alvin Kamara when you're just factoring in all the price ranges, but he played 53% of the snaps in week 5. He ran 23 routes. He saw 5 targets, just 2 catches for 17 yards, but he was a full-time slot player, right? Now you're going to see that there's no Deontay Harris in this game. There's no Taysom Hill. There's no Chris Hogan. Traequon Smith is going to return, but we don't know how involved that he will be. At the very worst, Kenny Stills, like he was last week when Deontay Harris was playing, and Marcus Callaway's out there. At the very worst, he's going to be the wide receiver 3 this week since there's no Hogan, Deontay Harris, or Taysom Hill, right? At the very worst, he'll be the wide receiver 3 like he was last week when he played over 50% of the snaps in his first real action with this team. And if there's a limited Traequon Smith, expect even more usage for Kenny Stills. Kenny Stills, I right now have projecting out for 6.8 fantasy points. Based on the fantasy point projection that I have for Kenny Stills, he should be closer in price point to DJ Dallas and Traequon Smith, which is about a $5,000 price player. He's only at $1,600. It's going to seem obvious if you watch any other content today or anything like that. Kenny Stills is massively mispriced on this slate. But can Kenny Stills go out there with a player who is not that great, right? You're going out there with a Jameis Winston, and Jameis only throws 25 times, and Kamara's getting a lot of usage, and Callaway and Traequon's getting some, and Kenny Stills only sees 3 targets, 1 catch for 17 yards. Yeah, so if Kenny Stills actually does come in as a too highly owned of a player, we'll talk about it on the live stream later today, then you can get away from it. But be sure to tune in for that live stream. Some more options down here. Some other guys that are going to be in play. Devine Ezigbo will be in play. Dwayne Washington didn't practice all week. I don't expect him to be the backup running back. Tony Jones is still in the IR. Devine Ezigbo, who he actually was first an undrafted free agent, I believe, with the Saints right when he graduated. But yeah, right when he graduated college and came to the NFL draft, didn't get drafted, got signed by the Saints, and then got cut, signed by Jacksonville. Now he's back full circle with the Saints, so he's back home, if you will. Played 13% of the snaps last week, no touches on 7 routes run. I would expect a little bit more usage this week. Hard to really get to him, though, over these guys above him. So maybe the X is a little bit aggressive. Dwayne Washington, unlikely to play. Ty Montgomery will also remain in play. Look, he's ran 26 routes in the last 2 weeks. The former wide receiver out of college, transitioned to running back at Green Bay, transitioned back to wide receiver now for the Saints. And with no Chris Hogan, no Deontay Harris, no Taysom Hill, he's probably going to operate now as the wide receiver 4 in this offense behind a potentially limited Traequon Smith. So Ty Montgomery, last 2 games, 5 total touches, 49 yards, 3 targets, 2 catches, remains in play. The rest of these guys, I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in Penny Hart, who only ran 3 routes, saw a target last week. I'm not interested in Garrett Griffin or Philip Dorsett, who these guys 8 total routes for Garrett Griffin in the year. Dorsett just 3 targets or 3 routes last week. I'm just not interested in those guys. So this is a fun slate. This is a fun slate where there's a lot of speculation, right? Because a lot of guys are returning that are not normally playing for either of these teams, whether it's because of injury, whether it's because they recently got added. Even Kenny Stills has only really been playing for like a week so far for New Orleans. So a lot of interesting stuff on this slate. I do like this slate a whole bunch. There's a like button. We will be live at 6 p.m. East Coast time tonight, so be sure to take care, brush your hair. But before you do that, be sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you know you can come answer your questions. It's a Q&A base. We feed off of the crowd's questions, so anything that you want answered tonight, any questions that you have, come bring them to the live stream. Now, before we go, let's build out or at least show you what I have so far in SuperDraft tonight. So SuperDraft, the best spot that you should put your first $20 tonight. It's as simple as that. Why is that, Sal? Their Monday Night Football contests fill at about 75%. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that they have a $40,000 contest and some other contests tonight in all sports, really, NBA, some other stuff that don't fill. So if it fills at 70% tonight or 75%, you are going to, just by entering one lineup, right? Just by entering one lineup right here, you are going to beat 25 to 30+% of the field because it's a guaranteed prize pool. It's a GPP. That's what the GDT stands for, guaranteed. So if you want to build out a lineup, and by the way, if you want a free $25, you put your first $25 in, use the code SAL, bam, you get a free $25 over on SuperDraft. How do you fucking like that? So I think the highest projected player I have on SuperDraft is Kamara, but he only has a 1x multiplier. This is not salary cap based. It's a very interesting format. So I actually think that Geno Smith is an interesting guy who will be lower owned in the captain spot, who looks just as good as Kamara, a little bit less fantasy points, but a higher multiplier. So he gets there. He gets more points than Kamara when he actually scores points. And then based Based on my projections, Kamara, Kenny Stills, and Marquez Callaway look good. You don't have to worry about stacking on SuperDraft or correlating. The multipliers tell you where to go. Then you have to fill in one more spot for yourselves. You guys can all do that on your end. I think that some other nice options are going to be Jameis Winston, DK Metcalf, DJ Dallas has a high multiplier. The kickers are always in play on these types of slates because of their high multipliers. So that's some spots that you can go there. Again, use the code SAL. It is the first place you should put $20 tonight because of the fact that contests don't fill. There is no better edge. Oh, what am I doing wrong? Contest selection. That's what I tell you. Small field sizes. But the number one rule, which never happens on DraftKings and FanDuel because they fill every single one of their contests, the number one rule is look for contests that don't fill because you just have to beat less people. It's as simple as that. If you're running a race and you can race against 1,000 people and you're trying to win money for the top 20% win money, and number one is a big prize like on any DFS slate. If you're running a race and you can run in the race that has 1,000 people running it, or you can run in the race that has 700 people running it for the same prize, for the same buy-in, why the hell would you choose the one that's got 1,000 people in it, right? There's no reason. There's no good game theory there. That's what's happening here. Go in and get it. Linked down below. Code SAL for free, $25. I'll see all you crazy people later today. Happy Monday. Happy beautiful day. Happy beautiful start to the week. I'll see you crazy people later today on the live stream. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your Monday. See you later. Take care. Brush your motherfucking hair.